So an example of this, and to get you to really start to think about, your past and your life and those circumstances, what were you taught about food and weight growing up? What were you taught about food and weight growing up? Can you remember the messages that came to you from, your family members, from people you knew, from society, from school friends, anything? So, myself in particular, for example, right? So I grew up in an abusive environment. I love my mom, but she had a severe eating disorder. I was only really, my weight was all, and my appearance were always what was talked about. My only worth had to do with that. And then, a person who was abused on top of it, it was very confusing. So everything around food, around appearance, around what to eat, what is this good food or bad food, was skewed for me. So my core beliefs were very skewed when it came to food, and I had to completely reprogram that. So depending on, if you had a parent who was very regimented and controlled maybe with the eating, okay, these are the things that you can have, these are the things you can't have. Now it could be, I had a parent who was, afraid of certain foods in general, right? You can't have gluten, you can't have sugar, you can't have whatever. They might believe that those things were right, depending on what they read and testing and different things. But funny, that can add so much stress to a child and to a child's life. Now, it's not as common back then if you're an older person right now, but like for those types of things, those seems to be a newer thing. But it, depending on what that is, that is going to shape and change, your brain, depending, right, the circumstances that you've had. So a core belief then that would transfer that type of thinking. Well, if I'm thin, I'm lovable and I'm attractive, so then I'm worthwhile, right? So if my parents are always on a diet, then you're like, if your parents are always dieting, right? That's witnessed, then you're picking up the signals of that second nature as a child. So mom can't have whatever types of foods, but I can as a kid. Well, that's a subconscious thing that's also being passed down. So wait a minute. So now I'm not worthy if I'm not a certain weight. All of these things can play a role in our brains, whether we recognize it or not. So what type of patterns did your parents have? What type of culture did you grow up in that you noticed? How was food talked about? How was food looked at? Did you sit and have, meals together? Was that something you prepared? Was that a loving environment? Or was it something that was a source of stress? So these are the things to think about and be aware of as you do these exercises.